I would say this is sort of an unusual event. It's funny, we're all spread all over the world in different rooms, everybody's locked up. Um, but for me, this is how I've always lived. So much of my life, as I think is increasingly the case for you, wherever you are, is intermediated by these screens. We spend less time outside and more time staring into glass or through glass to connect with that larger world, with something beyond ourselves. And so that's why it's particularly important, I think, as we see the world happening through these screens. And increasingly, it feels like something distinct from us, something apart from us, something that we are witnessing rather than participating in. Um, that you look at it. I want you to think about the world as you see it now and what you see happening in it. And ask yourself, is this your will? Is this what you wanted? Did you agree to this? Is this consistent with the vision of the future that you want to see? It's interesting to me that we seem to be living in this moment that feels much closer to what I think is the standard of history, rather than our ideal of modernity, in that the institutional powers of our day, when you think about the structures that actually affect the world, organized groups of people who have assumed for themselves some mandate, whether it's to conduct business, whether it's to govern the lives of others, whether it's to make war. These institutional powers, they don't seem to particularly care about your answer to that question. Is this what you wanted? Is this okay? Did you agree to it? And I think when we look at those institutions and their responses to that question, or rather ask for their feelings about our answer to that question, it's informative, because legislators would say that it doesn't matter. They control the law. Police would say that you don't have a choice as to whether or not you agree to this, because they have the gun, they have the baton. And Facebook would say, click OK to continue. And if you don't, you can't do anything, because they control the policy. And through the policy, they control the platform. And through the platform, they control the public. They control all of us and aggregate our lives, or at least exercise some great level of influence over it by gating us off, separating us from the things that we need to do to connect and engage in just what is considered today a normal life. And so there is this presumption amongst all of them that merely by existing, merely by, click OK to continue, merely by continuing, they say that you agreed to this. But I don't think that you did, and I bet you don't think so either. The reality is these institutions, all of them, they pretend that we consent to their actions. They pretend that we agree because of where we were born, or where we have no choice but to live, or lead a life to which we have no alternative because of economic insecurity, or political barriers, or barriers to movement. And I think it can be something as simple as, you opened a website, you turned on your phone. All of these things today have consequences, which we are not informed about, even if you read the 600 pages of legalese, because one of the very first terms in these terms of use that are applied to our lives is that these terms can change at any time. A statement that's as true for government as it is for corporations. And it's time that we recognize these are forced choices. If we don't have an alternative but to click OK, if there's no other option but to say no thanks, I would rather have my privacy, no thanks, but I would rather not have you collect this data, no thanks, but I would rather not have you apply violence to minorities, to people who are unlike me, or even to people who are like me. I would like to be treated fairly. I would like to see a more equitable world. I would like to see a better world, and I would like to make that happen. I would like to see politicians who are reasonable rather than extremist. I would like to see police that are worried about public safety rather than state security. And I think the fact that so many of our interactions in modern life, so many of the activities that we have to engage in are intermediated as our lives are by this glass. They are separated from us by this gate of a forced choice. We need to recognize that that is not consent, and the law needs to recognize that that is not consent. The companies need to recognize that is not consent, and the only way that that happens is if we recognize that that is not consent, not in any way that really matters. And I think that is what's happening today. I think that's what we see around the world. I think that's, for a large part, what is responsible for the rising tide of anger that we feel in so many ways. People don't feel a sense of agency. They recognize that things in the world are not going in the right direction, and they don't agree with it. And they do care about it, despite what people say to the contrary. But they don't feel that they have the ability to change it. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about consent. We need to realize that that lack of consent matters. We need to realize that we matter. And the only way that this changes, right, because what we're seeing is a divorce between the individual and the institutional in terms of power and accountability. We have the institutions that wield the greatest influence over society, whether we're talking about presidents, whether we're talking about people in Hungary, whether we're talking about people in Brazil, whether we're talking about people in Russia or China, new presidents for life. We need to recognize that there seems to be nothing they can do that results in them facing a serious consequence, whereas the smallest infractions of our lives, that can even be civil rather than criminal, are instantly crystallized and memorialized at the moment of mistake and captured into a permanent record that's held and controlled by these groups, again, whether they are commercial or whether they are governmental. And we have no influence to change them. But that's what we need. We need things to change. And, so many people are asking for change. They're basically complaining. They're writing articles. They're going, Facebook, you need to do this. They're going, government, please do this for us. But the sad truth of history, when you look, they are actually better than the problems we had in the past, as hard as it is to say. The world is getting better. But we are at a moment of regression. And the only way we make things get better again is through struggle and sacrifice, because change is never something that is granted. Concessions are not given to us by power. Our rights are not gifts. They are prizes that are won. And that won't happen without you. That won't happen simply because you believe in something. That won't happen simply because you care about something. That will only happen when you stand for something. It's not enough to believe in something. It's not enough to say all the right things. It's not enough to just put out a tweet out there. If you want things to change, you have to make things change, and that change begins with you. It's a small thing. It's one conversation at a time. It's not looking away. It's not walking past someone who does the wrong thing. It's saying that you don't agree. It's trying to change the outcome, even in small ways, but recognizing that you have power. I don't care how small you are. I don't care how isolated you are. I don't care how little you are. To the people near you, to the world around you, in your workplace, in your community, in your country, in your own personal space, you can make a difference. But the only time you make a difference is when you actively make that difference, when you make a choice to change things. Again, like we said at the beginning of this talk, look around the world, look around what's happening. Everyone says this is okay by you. Everyone says, you agree with this. The world is asking you right now, history is asking you right now, click OK to continue. And for me, I'm done clicking.